So a user named Ratchet Spoils over on NeoGAF recently posted what myself and many others are believing to be the major plot points and spoilers regarding Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. Now, if you've looked at my channel, if you've spent any time watching my videos, you're going to know I'm a huge Ratchet and Clank fan, been a fan since day one back in 2002. So I've got a lot of time invested in these characters and these stories that INSOMNIAC have been crafting and putting their time and money into since 2002. And unfortunately, my curiosity peaked and got the better of me. I had to look over these quote-unquote spoilers to see exactly what we're dealing with. And I got to be legitimate with you guys like I always like to do. I think this is real. I really do, because what happened is after Ratchet Spoils posted this, it was up for about 2 hours before the thread started gaining some traction. And then it was pulled down and the account was actually deleted. So I'm wondering if this isn't somebody over there at INSOMNIAC actually leaking the details of the game. Now, it wasn't like an actual full-blown script, but it was kind of like plot points highlighting what happens throughout the game. So luckily, somebody, one of the wonderful users over there at NeoGAF, was able to save a local file of the post, and he uploaded it to Pastebin. And so I read over it just to get myself, like I said, I hesitated because I was like, if this turns out to be real, I'm probably not gonna, I'm gonna regret looking at it, because the story is one of the primary reasons I play Ratchet and Clank. However, curiosity killed the cat. I looked at it, and from what I'm reading on the Ratchet and Clank subreddit, people are like 80-20% divided, but the majority, the overwhelming majority, myself included, we do believe that this is legitimately spoiling plot points of the game. We don't have all the context that we need to, deliver you a full start-to-finish summary of the game's events, but there's a lot of good information here that hits a lot of the major plot points. So I don't like to waste time. I don't want this to be about whether I think it's real or not. I just want to get the information to you guys, and everybody can make up their own minds. But yeah, the Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart script details have leaked. So let's go ahead and get into it. Let's talk about what this says, and we'll try to pick this apart a little bit. So the game opens on the planet Zorlin, which is this icy, frost-covered planet, and Ratchet and Clank are on this planet to recover some sort of booster or jetpack or something. It's not made real clear in this post, but it's some sort of device that can propel small objects forward. And so it's not real clear what they're doing on Zorlin to start with, but that's actually where the tutorial takes place in the game. You learn your movement controls, you learn your weapon controls, and you're introduced to your first weapon in addition to the wrench. That's where the whole tutorial takes place, is this planet Zorlin, this kind of like frosty world, which is actually fairly uncommon for the Ratchet and Clank series. I can't think off the top of my head of many snow-covered worlds. But it kind of doesn't waste any time. It jumps right into the plot. The reason that Ratchet and Clank are looking for this booster, this thruster, what have you, is because Ratchet is looking to insert them up his ass and stimulate his Lombax prostate. And Clank's going to assist with this. So they're looking for these thrusters that they can insert rectally into Ratchet's ass. Now, they don't actually find them on Zorlin. They're not there. But this becomes the overarching plot of the game, is that Ratchet is exploring his sexuality, and he wants to penetrate himself, or rather be penetrated by Clank, who's assisting him with this prostate stimulation. So they go from that planet to this other planet called Wamba. Wamba is kind of like a fiery world, and it's very volcanic. There's a lot of eruptions. There's like burning, smoldering lava everywhere. It's very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's very red, and it's, there's elemental hazards in the form of lava and fire that shoots out at you. It's actually here that we meet the new Lombax in the game. Now, the new Lombax is incredibly interesting. So, we've got Ratchet and Clank, our main characters, and we've got the new Lombax. Her name is Screw. So we got Ratchet, Clank, and Screw. It's actually a plot point later that her name is Screw because she gets around. She's like a Lombax whore. So she whores herself out. They go into her backstory a little bit. Grew up on this kind of like poverty-ridden planet. And so she's prostituting herself out in order to make a living, which is fine. You know, you got to do what you got to do. It's actually revealed as another major plot point down the road that she's actually a transgender Lombax because Sony loves to appeal to the SJW crowd and they have to shoehorn in the unnecessary diversity in their games. And now, you know, they have brainwashed the kids into believing that this is the way the world should be. So, yep. So we've got a transvestite Lombax and we got Ratchet who's looking to explore his sexuality through anal penetration. One guess as to where this plot point ends up. Essentially halfway through the game, the climax of the game, no pun intended, is the transgender Lombax Screw finally cultivating in a steamy and playable gay Lombax sex scene with Ratchet. And it's here that the control is actually pulled back from Ratchet and given over to Screw. And it's very button mashy. But you have to time it right. It actually becomes like a rhythm game. Otherwise, Ratchet won't be sexually satisfied. He'll have come to have figured out that his adventure sexually was for naught, and he will actually, you'll get a game over screen. He will throw his arms up, swear up and down, he'll never see you again, and he'll leave. Which we don't want that. You know, we want him to be satisfied. And then if you hit it all right, you actually get a secret scene where Clank joins in, and then it becomes a Lombax robot three-way. That gets a little weird. I really probably couldn't say some of the stuff that happens without getting this video taken down. There's something involving a plastic horse, and there's ice cubes, and there's a lamp. It gets very strange when you investigate what actually turns Clank on. And so we're going to leave that part out of the video for now, but back on track. Essentially the whole game this was intentionally misleading. So, if you remember what Sony did with The Last of Us Part 2, they released all these trailers indicating that Joel was going to be with Ellie and that he was going to be a major part of the game. Turns out they were lying sacks of shit and Joel got his head bashed in not even 2 hours into the game. Well, this is something similar. All the gameplay that's been released so far is actually not from Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. The game itself's not even called Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. It's called Ratchet & Clank A Hole to Fill. And the titular hole to fill is Ratchet's. And essentially, the majority of the gameplay abandons the tried and true Ratchet & Clank formula of platforming, shooting, and collecting in favor of performing lewd sexual acts both as and to Ratchet. So, as you can see, they take plenty of creative liberties here. And quite frankly, if I said some of this stuff out loud, I would be locked up in the state of Alabama, okay? So I don't want to get into too much of this stuff, but there's a lot here that, trust me, this is a side of Ratchet we've never seen before, and Clank is so on board with it. Clank has his own kinks. One of them is getting literal lubricant, like oil, sprayed all over him. There's like a form of a golden shower. They call it an oil shower. It's just, trust me, this is Ratchet & Clank as we've never seen them before, and this is Ratchet & Clank that we will never be able to look at them the same way again. As far as the gameplay itself, Ratchet & Clank A Hole to Fill is probably the most adventurous the game has ever been, or the series has ever been, in its many iterations of games that should have been killed many years ago, but I digress. The graphics are great, particularly during these button mashy sex scenes. You can tell they really stripped away a lot of the user input, so the game itself the CPU doesn't need to run it at an extraordinarily high frame rate when you're just focused on one scene. So the graphics are fantastic. It looks literally like you'd imagine a souped-up interactive Pixar movie depicting an animal having sex with a transvestite animal and his robot friend. It's exactly what you would picture that to be in your head. So major props to Insomniac and Sony for depicting that exactly as you would imagine it would be. The conclusion of the game sees this semi-gay bestiality, robot porn threesome converge on Ratchet's home world, except this time both Captain Quark and Dr. Nefarious are getting down, and by getting down, I mean quite literally getting on their knees to join the Suckfest, and it just gets there's a shocking ending, a mind-blowing ending. It reaches a magnificent climax, and literally, as Quark is reaching his climax, the game cuts to your credits, and it commits this egregious sin of leaving Quark and the viewer, presumably, completely blue-balled. It's very disappointing. So up until that point, I praised them for both the creativity and the brave decision-making to take this once edgy series back to its roots and go even further. I mean, you're not going to find many video games depicting what are now children's icons having a robot anally penetrate a Lombax with his fist. It's just not something you see in video games these days. And, I wish that more developers were brave enough to take these bold and risky endeavors into their games. It feels like everybody plays it so safe. But they completely dropped the ball, or Quark's balls in this case, on the ending, leaving them backed up with semen and leaving the viewer feeling like they just couldn't get all of it as they could. I mean, I would say that they're milking Ratchet and Clank, but that would just be really poor word choice on my part. I mean, the best way I can describe it is just disappointing by the time you reach the conclusion of this adventurous and at times homoerotic game. Much like I did with my God of War script review, this was not to be unexpected with how Sony brought everything into the fold with the SJW elements of The Last of Us Part 2. I mean, in that game, you literally played as a transvestite for half the entire game, right? This woman with arms bigger than Marcus's from Gears of War. This was naturally the direction they would have to go, and I guess it was a bit foolish of me to assume that their franchises, even ones as child-friendly as Ratchet and Clank, wouldn't ultimately follow. So again, I have to give my props to Insomniac for putting themselves out there, quite literally putting Ratchet out there with Ratchet and Clank a hole to fill, but at the same time, that hole isn't getting filled quite enough. There's room more to fill the hole, and I think at this point they just need to step up their game and pack as much in there as they really can, all right? If I had to score the script and the story based off of what I've seen in this particular instance, I would give it 69 out of 100, just because while it really does swing and it's got its aim set high, you can tell that they were shooting to knock it out of the park. It falls a little bit short. It's a little bit disappointing, and it turns out size does matter after all, because it's an incredibly short game. I mean, at the end of the day, Ratchet and Clank, a hole to fill, is going to satisfy certain people. There is a group in the world who get off on being denied, and those type of people I point to this game willingly, and I tell them to go blow their money, if not something else, on it. But for me and everybody else who enjoys seeing things through and getting that satisfying conclusion, Ratchet and Clank, a hole to fill, will not fill the crack in your heart, but it does allow you to fill Ratchet's anus with semen from a transvestite Lombax, so that might just be enough for you. As for me, I believe the script leak is real. This is genuine. This seems like something that Sony and Insomniac would do. However, at the end of the day, that's up for you guys to decide. You guys let me know if you believe this is real or if you believe this is someone just jerking your chain. Like I said, I think it's real based on all the context I provided in this video, but I'm open to the possibility that maybe this could just be somebody trolling. So I appreciate you guys watching as always. Let me know, I'm keeping my eye out for more script leaks if you have any that you hear might possibly be leaked, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.